meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Chairman Whitcup?
Present.
Commissioner Gavahi?
Available.
Commissioner Dillon?
Here.
Commissioner Noble?
Here.
Commissioner Connolly? Commissioner Marr?
Here.
No
Commissioner LaRue?
está aquí. Okay. So we have a quorum, so we're good to go. I apologize in advance for my voice, fighting laryngitis. So to anyone here who can't hear me, just tell me to talk louder and I'll try and I'll squeak a little bit, but we'll do the best we can. Our next item is public comment. This is public participation is encouraged. If you're addressing the planning commission, step to the podium, name and address for the record, limit your comments to 3 minutes. Don't include any topic that is on the agenda, please. We will have public comment at that time. So anybody in the audience like to come forward for their 3 minutes? Okay, there being one person in the audience shaking his head no, I'll say no. Perfect. I need a motion to approve the minutes. You were presented with the minutes in your packet. Please.
I would like to make a motion to approve the minutes of, I think November.
November.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, we have a motion. I have a second.
I'll second.
All right, Mr. Noble, thank you. All right, motion and second. All in favor of approving the minutes, please call the roll.
Commissioner Gavahi?
Yes.
Commissioner Noble?
Yes.
Commissioner Connolly?
Yes.
Commissioner Dillon?
Yes.
Commissioner Marr?
Yes.
Chairman Whitcup?
Yes. Okay, so under new business, we really don't have anything. Or old business, we are going to have some items that we're going to want to discuss that some members of the panel would like to bring up, or members of the commission, but we're going to do that under discussion, if that's okay with you guys. Is that good, with everybody?
Yes.
Okay. So administrative and staff presentations. First one is ordinance 2024 dash whatever it's going to be called, shade structures.
Yes, we do not have the numbers yet. So you'll look at the printed out version that was on the dais today. An older version was uploaded into the packet, so sorry about that. So we can just start at the beginning. We tried to input all of the comments that we had at our last discussion on the shade structures. And this is really to capture gazebos, tiki huts, so what you would think of as an open accessory structure. So we added the definitions section. This is very similar to the last time you saw this. So we have the accessory structure and then how we measure the open accessory structure, measuring the area and the setbacks of that, and that would include the roof and the overhang of the entire roof. And that the height is measured from the grade at the base of the accessory structure. We talked about that last time. Yeah, let's pull it up and all right. Then we included, let's see, the cheeky structures that you still need to get your building permit for planning and zoning purposes, and that it's exempt from the Florida Building Code, that they must be maintained, and then structures that are excluded from permitting, including outdoor storage containers, with the dimensions of that, and then the removable sunshades in the side and rear yards. And then the pole setback, we have that also in our open sky provision in our code. So it matches the other sections in our code. Any questions or comments on that? Any additions that anyone has for that first section?
So are we proposing here the alternate option to be included in the ordinance?
These would be like your amendments for the section in the code.
Okay.
But just stop me whenever, if you have any questions, if you say, okay, well, have you thought about this, or maybe adding this to this section, just speak up, and we can,
Yeah, so I think specifically, maybe he was looking for clarification where we have alternate option, or is it alternate for us to discuss with them, or alternate to be included in the amendment? So to be clear, it's alternate for us to discuss.
yeah, so if we're done with that first section, just the definitions and the overall, then.
Okay, sorry, I got ahead of you then.
Yeah.
My bad.
Sorry, and I got confused a little bit.
Okay.
So, yeah, we can go to R1, and
Yep, sorry.
Marcy has a picture, if you could bring that up, of the alternate option. And that's kind of what we talked about at the last few meetings, of that vision triangle versus just having the setbacks. So Marcy has that up, and created this.
Okay.
Yeah, so similar to kind of what we did last time, but we did the alternate. So we have this one where we would do almost like a vision triangle, and I'll explain that. And then we also drew up what it would look like if we didn't do the vision triangle. You can sort of see with the triangle, we basically kept, so if you're in R1, you end up with the same side yard setbacks. And R2, you end up with the primary setbacks for R2. This is an R2 example. So if you take the 5-foot setback, 5-foot setback, and you kind of go down the center line of the property, or you do, then the primary structure setback is 30 feet. So for each property line, we draw a line 30 feet. You would draw a line 30 feet, then take that center point, extend it out, and that's how you create the buildable area using that triangle approach. You can see it kind of creates a little bit of obviously an awkward shaped piece of property. We are doing it 12 feet. For this particular example, we did take it 12 feet off from the water's face of the seawall back. And this becomes your buildable area with your pool here. And this is a 16 by 12 example of how a tiki hut to scale would fit in there.
And then remember that the area includes the overhang of the roof.
Okay.
Yes, so it would be the entire footprint of the structure would be held to this criteria. This is if we didn't do the triangle, but took more of a just standard kind of setback approach, 12 feet off the property line, 5 feet and 5 feet in. And then we kind of create this buildable area here in the backyard. And again, this is a 16 by 12 2-scale tiki, and what it would look like as compared to what else is going on. And you'll see later we did create like a sliding scale for the size of the tiki huts. So that's also going to be in there as well. So as Jenny goes through this, these are kind of the visuals for these.
So that'll be the biggest thing here in R1 and R2 is, do you want to do the vision triangle approach or just the standard setback approach? As a planning and permitting, on our side, we see it'd be a lot easier just with the setbacks
Yeah.
instead of the triangle. We know that would be more difficult in permitting and talking to residents on where they can put
I think
structures.
based on, for that reason, that's one reason. Another one is most of our backyards are pretty shallow on the waterfront properties. That triangle is going to make very little difference other than make it more complicated. I don't see, personally, I don't see a huge difference in the impact. This is me.
And actually, to clarify for the triangle version, if you'll notice, like with taking this one into account, the 8 by 12 tiki fits here. It kind of shrinks it up and pushes it in with the pool. But with this version of it, you do have a little more flexibility with the size and how you can do it, so.
Right, if the goal is to have shade, and you're not going to have shade with the triangle, you got to have less shade, then it's just the easier setbacks.
Yep.
And that's going to be hard to enforce this right here, especially a lot of
I
them are
mean,
going to
who's
be
snapping lines
non-conforming.
and all that kind of stuff too from there. It just, I think it gets a lot more complicated.
Yeah,
And then
this
you're
is
going to get
definitely why-
arguments, well, my house sits further back, so my triangle
Absolutely.
should be different, or mine's,
Absolutely.
That's
it's,
exactly it.
it's, if a neighbor complains, whatever. Yeah, I like the straightforward setbacks done, personally.
Agreed.
Okay.
Okay, great.
I have a question. So sometimes the rear property lines are not necessarily consistent with the seawall.
Right.
So the setback is from the property line, not the seawall.
We take our setback in the rear on the water side, water-facing side of the seawall.
Okay, so that's how it's described?
Yes,
Not,
in our
not the property
definitions.
line then?
Exactly.
Yeah, there's some odd properties out there where, like, I know my neighbor,
Right.
he had almost 2 feet of property that he didn't own, and that was his seawall. His
Yes.
property line was actually inside the seawall by about 2 feet. And when the title company didn't check it when they sold it, and he still owned that sliver of property, and he had a falling out with the guy who bought the house, and he was gonna go put a gate up and not let him get to his dock. I mean, so we gotta be careful on how we define it, but if it's clearly defined as
Yeah.
the water side of the seawall, that takes all that out of the
Okay.
equation.
All right, that's awesome. So as far as the dead men, how are we addressed the dead men in this case?
We mimicked our pool, which is, our pool requirement is 12 feet back from the seawall, and with an engineer's letter, you can go 8 feet, but we felt like since this was a structure above grade like this, we would stick to just the 12 feet to be clean and clear.
Now, dead men are typically 18 feet, right?
Some are 16, some are 12.
Yeah.
Some of the stingrays they use are shorter. They're-
Exactly.
John, do you know?
Yep.
Right? There's no standard, right?
They're pretty short for what we see here and for the installation, so we typically I haven't seen any that are the 18.
Well, could we cover this by maybe stipulating that to avoid the dead men, or a letter from a structural engineer? Because, I've seen a lot of 18-foot dead men.
Oh, and no, they're definitely out there. We can do that. Yeah, we can just do a similar letter like we do with the pools for 8 feet. We can do it for 12 feet. For the-
And no visibility triangle in this case, right? Along the property line corners.
Correct. If we go with the straightforward route, they'll be able to put the hut anywhere within this zone.
And it would just be the setback.
It would just be setback standard across.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So then if you've got a rectangular lot, then it's staying in line with the house as opposed to that one you're going out because the property's getting wider.
Correct. So it'll always be basically like, look at it, it'll always be parallel to whatever the property line is, so it will always mimic the angle and line of the property. So if we go 5 feet in, it's directly 5 feet.
Likewise, if the water lot gets narrower, it's going to get narrower.
And then in terms of the quantities for the maximum size, is that section 110, 480?
Yes. So that has another option on the sizes.
Well, I thought depends upon how big of a structure you can do, depending upon how much area you've got back there.
So there's two sections. There's one on just the setbacks. That's the section that we're in right now.
Okay.
And then later on in this section, we'll be talking about the size.
Gotcha, okay, so I'm getting ahead of myself then.
Just a little.
Yeah, okay.
It's
Happens.
it's a little weird. We match
happens.
how it already is in the code, how it's broken out in the code, so we just kind of followed suit with that for accessory structure. So it's kind of split out a little differently.
I do have one more question related to fire. Would there be any, I guess fire department will have to look at this, and the building separation is what I'm mostly thinking.
So that's where it gets a little tricky with like the cheeky huts, technically, because they're all natural material and they're installed. That's pretty much why they don't have to pull any Florida building code. The only things they typically get are the planning and zoning for where it can be and how high it can be. They are not tasked with that aspect of it. And And in speaking with the Tiki Hut for residential, it's not an aspect they seem to look at. We can definitely, for commercial uses, obviously we do, but then they're also Florida Building Code rated. So that would definitely be something we can look at, but it doesn't seem to be a consideration for them, so, but we can definitely,
Yeah.
it's definitely worth looking into.
And then it also mimics our building setbacks, so we'll definitely have them, fire department, review this before, but they may not have any
Yeah.
concerns, since it's the same setback as your typical building, thinking on the side.
Yeah, mostly I was thinking of the
How
building
close is the house?
separation.
Yeah, how close
Oh,
it is
to
to
the
the
house.
actual house, yeah. So I see what he's getting at.
Yeah.
So then finally, and as I'm reading here, so we're 110,472, correct?
Yes, that's where we are right now.
Yep,
Okay, so and then the alternate for that
we were going to scratch
is,
that.
would be the triangle.
Yep.
Yeah. So so it's either the setbacks or the triangle.
Okay. So it would either be the first paragraph or the second one.
Right, not both.
Okay.
And that'll apply for 473 as well, and so on. There are other alternate ones.
Would you need motions for these, or just?
No, this is just
discussion?
discussion.
Right now, I
So-
think we're just at discussion phase
yeah.
because we got to propose the actual ordinance.
Exactly.
Got to clean it up a little bit.
And then it'll come back to you with an actual ordinance number,
Right.
and can also make changes then, too. Yeah, so it seems like we like the setbacks more than the triangle, so we'll keep that for R1 and R2 then.
Okay? Then our next move is
R3
C3.
has no changes, C1, C2, C3, no changes. C4, let's see. So instead of the same side and rear setbacks, a 10-foot side and rear setback. And then accessory structures for working waterfronts or marina uses, which are required by federal or state regulations to be immediately proximate to the water's edge, are permitted within that required setback. And the owner must show documentation from the federal or state regulating board to permit the accessory structures within that required setback.
And why is this change proposed?
We've had concerns on a few structures in working waterfronts where they're required to have shade or some open structure on taking off the fish from the boat to the land, and it's a federal requirement, state requirement, and we have nothing in our code to permit that. So this is just clearing that up and then also stating that they have to prove where it is a
So is the
federal or
10-foot
state.
side and rear setback greater or less than the cross-through, the same side and rear setbacks as
is-
required by the,
You know what it is right now?
well, you got the one cross-through.
Yes, so the C4 zoning district, the rear is 18 feet, and the side is 10 feet or 33% if the lot size is 80 feet or greater. And a lot of those lots are not that deep, so it doesn't provide that much room
Right.
for any accessory structures, so this kind of provides a little bit of room.
So this actually helps the marine commercial industry, to me, it
Yes,
seems like.
and there's only a few
Right.
properties that are C4.
We're losing them.
Okay?
So this is the area that I was talking about before, so where the maximum open accessory structure area, the ratio is, rear yard area, okay, 0 to 1,000 feet. So is that based on grassy area minus a pool, or is it just the total area of the total resident.
This one's just the setbacks as well. So then there's another section that says, okay, well, if you're in this district, you can have this size of an accessory structure. So here is only talking about the setbacks from your property lines. Yeah, I think you're at 110, 480, which we'll jump into.
Getting ahead of us again.
Yeah.
Slow down,
That's
Tiger,
okay.
slow down.
Well, they go together in your mind. You know? It makes sense to be together, but that's not how it's written. Okay, so we can go to the maximum size unless if anyone has.
Now we're there.
Now we can go to this.
Chuck, any questions? No.
Yes. Okay, yeah, so this is all related to rear yard areas, which I got into, I'm wondering about Cambria on their side with that new structure going up. Is that falling in these guidelines? Because it sure looks like it's taking up a whole lot of area.
So that one it's within the primary setback of the building itself, and because of how it's constructed, it was viewed as such. So it wasn't really viewed like a rear kind of situation. Because it's attached to the building like an overhang, and it's within the primary footprint that's allowed for the structure. So that's how that was permitted.
So it's not an accessory structure
Correct.
technically?
Yes, correct. It's not, it's almost like if you were to add on a porch or an overhang, that's how that was viewed and permitted.
So is that a way of getting around it?
No, no, it would be just like anybody else who wanted to permit a porch or a deck. It's the same process for a covered deck or anything like that. That's how that's
Wanted to put an
viewed.
awning over your sliding, a pergola over
Yep.
your back
And when
porch.
people add like a sun porch or whatever, it's the same kind of viewpoint.
Well, in terms of like that, if we're talking about the square area as opposed to the triangle on the property right there, you could theoretically come right off the house and have the whole entire backyard covered.
But you wouldn't, because you would still have to meet, technically the primary structure and whatever's attached to that has to meet that setback. So that's what I'm saying, when it's constructed within the footprint of that the primary structure is allowed to be, then you are good, you're correct. They could add a whole sunroom on, provided they met the primary setback. If you don't, then that's when we start looking at the accessory structures and giving the flexibility to add those, if that makes sense.
Yes, but does and by going with the 12-foot setback off the seawall, you've got that square area, so can't they basically go to that area?
That's for accessory structures only, and they're limited in size. So you wouldn't be able to do that. Plus, we also have structure coverage requirements for the lots that also have to be met. So like only a certain percentage of your lot can be covered with a structure. That all has to be met. So there's certain things that kick in that help govern how this works and how it'll be viewed. So, yeah, if that makes sense. You want to add anything?
No, I think
Well, you
we're
would still be
good.
able to put a screened enclosure around your pool, and that would be kind of what he's asking there, but it would,
Only if it's within your.
right, it would have to fit
Setbacks.
the setback, so that would be the same.
Correct. So the way our code is when you have the setback for your primary structure, you can pretty much do whatever you want. You can do full house there, add a sunroom, but it's all within the footprint. It all has to meet the setbacks for the primary structure. You can't go out of that. So that's why the accessory structures, right now, the way our code is written, is you can only have an accessory structure if it's within the footprint of the primary structure.
Well, how about like a pool cover? I mean, the
Cage.
cages, yeah.
We have those, those are allowed. There's requirements for pool cages. There's verbiage in the code for pool cages.
Okay, so it's a completely separate thing then, okay. And I'm just kind of trying to make sure that we're not,
Agreed.
getting ourselves in a loophole, like, okay, well, you did this, so I can do that now.
Correct. No, you're absolutely correct.
Okay.
So, and asking those questions, because it does elicit the conversation, so, yeah.
Thank you.
Question. The way you calculate the rear yard area, would that be the setback, I guess the width of the setback times the, let's say, frontage, or would it be what's there between the existing building, or maybe there are no buildings there? So would you look at, for instance, if there's a house on it, between the building and then the seawall, that's the depth, and then multiply it by the length?
So it seemed that last we brought this up, that the idea was to capture the rear yard is the back of the face of the building to, say, the seawall, the water's edge of the seawall. So, and we know that varies from lot to lot, or from building to building, lot to lot. If you have a legally non-conforming building, you may have a very small rear yard. So that's also why we put in an alternative option, because we know that we can foresee that that's going to be tricky to calculate, tricky to talk to residents on what they could put in their yard, and it came out to roughly about the same size. So if we did do the rear yard area, we would definitely have to bring that definition also in that section 110-471 in the beginning of this division, just to be very clear on how we calculate that. But internally, we were talking that we think this alternative option as a percentage is just a cleaner way to go about it. It's easier for residents to understand what they can, what we can permit, what they can.
Personally, I think that's a better idea. It is clear because it's not open for interpretation. You can go to public records and pull up the lot size. It's this many square feet, period, end of story. It's not somebody out there, well, this bush is on my line and
Exactly.
my house has got
my
a
house
2-degree
juts
slant
out.
and it,
Yeah.
yeah. I think if you just take the overall lot size, clean, simple, it's this much percentage, whether that number works on a 5,000 square foot lot, that's 175 square feet. Which is, falls kind of in where we're talking about between 150 and 250.
And Marcy and I sat down, we looked all over Madeira Beach, looking at, what tiki structures are there right now, how big is the lot size, how big is the rear yard, and all of them really came out as an average of that 3.5%. It also is very similar to what we had before in that table. So that's where we got it.
I think that's so much simpler, and there's less cause for argument there and interpretation.
Absolutely.
It's simple, it's quantifiable. Hey, here's your plat map, here's your survey that says
You can do.
this many square feet, this much percentage, go.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're gonna get into arguments, well, I didn't add this room on, but I didn't, or, this doesn't count, or do I measure from the windowsill that sticks out 2 inches further or back to
We
the
know that
house?
we will
or-
get that.
Or do I measure to the door sill, people are gonna kind of finagle it this way. I think it's just more cut and dry.
And then if you have a non-conforming lot, you're still limited to the distance, the rear setback of the 12 feet, if we stick with that. You still have the side. So even if your home does encroach, you still get boxed into that area, and your
Right.
size becomes controlled. So it kind of works every which way we kind of looked at it. We kind of felt good with
There's
that.
always gonna be an issue with one or two, or, you know what I mean? There's always gonna be something, because we have some really weird lots, behind the 7-Eleven over there. You walk out the back door, take one big step, you're in the bay, There's no backyard. It's strange, right? So those you're gonna have to handle as a one-off, but I think to cover 99% of it that works, it just makes it simple.
We agree with you.
Yeah, I see that. It's gonna shake hand. Shut up, Mike. Okay, perfect. Moving right along.
Okay.
Well, I'm doing some math here, and if I'm doing it wrong, okay, so my lot's 115 by 60, 6,900 square feet. So times 3.5% equals 241 square feet.
Maximum. It could be less, depend, if it doesn't fit.
Yeah, I
then-
mean, so like 241, but yet, so 12 by 15 is 180. So I could build a huge tiki hut with those numbers. I mean, so that's why I'm wondering, is 3.5% kind of on the large side. I mean, because my backyard,
You have a big-ish lot, though, for Madeira Beach.
Yeah,
no, they're all the
that's
same on Crystal
pretty
Island.
big for your
And-
typical.
Yeah, and like she said, the ones that we ran, if you look at our chart from the 0 to 1,000, 1,000 to 3, 3,000, almost every one that we looked at and vetted that way that's already been constructed fell into this category. And they seemed, we do have a few outliers that are kind of large, but for the ones that seemed appropriate for where they were located, the 3.5% worked as, and it kind of really comes really close to what we were seeing here if you followed the chart. So.
Well, I mean, I'm just thinking about, so I could have a 12 by 20 in the rear of my lot, and it'd be huge. Just,
And then you can invite all of us over.
and I guess I'm just like, I don't know as to whether or not it's simpler, but yet is it really advantageous?
But okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. But the proposal also, the other way, would be 250 square feet, so it's same, right?
Well, but that's if my rear lot is 3,000 square feet.
But you're 60-something feet wide and your setback is
But
20
that's
feet
the
from the
whole-
water, that's 3,000 square feet. Crystal Island, right?
Okay?
You're 60-plus feet wide,
Yeah,
and your,
60.
and your rear setback's 20 feet on
25,
Crystal Island.
yeah,
So there's your
25,
3,000 square feet, so
Okay.
you're
So I
actually
could do
getting
it.
smaller by 10 feet.
Yeah, and that's kind
Yeah.
of,
So,
Where we
yeah,
end up.
depending which angle you take at it, kind of comes out the same
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
right?
I didn't do the math that quickly yet. I was still working on it.
All right, we good there?
So are we good with the 3.5% then?
I like it. And everybody said they agreed with me, so who said they
Yeah.
agreed, so I'm not going to say
You're
anymore.
right. We also wrote in there, single-family structures may have one enclosed and one open accessory structure. So you could only have one accessory structure. And then you go down to duplex and multifamily. It's 2 enclosed accessory structures and 1 open accessory structure for every 2 dwelling units. And it's, I guess we'll go with that 3.5%
Yep.
option 2. And similar for the temporary lodging uses, have 2 enclosed accessory structures, no limitation on the amount of open accessory structures, but then they also have to meet that size. So all of your open accessory structures combined cannot exceed these sizes. So then that
Okay.
will also go with the 3.5%. And that's really it for the sizes, for those, for the residential. In the commercial, let's see, 8 feet wide by 12 feet long by 10 feet high instead of 8 feet high. I think we did that in our other section as well. Yeah, so in all the residential and the commercial, we're proposing instead of 8 feet high, to increase that to 10 feet high.
Makes sense.
That's all from ground, right? From
From grade.
grade,
Yeah,
existing grade,
yeah. And then in the
not
commercial.
proposed grade,
What was that?
not proposed
No.
grade.
Properties in the commercial areas can have 2 enclosed and 2 open accessory structures. And then for working waterfronts or marina uses, which are required for federal or state regulations, and this is where we wanted some input as well. Because we understand that there may be regulations that could limit the amount of accessory structures. So we don't want it to, limit them when they need these structures for their business, but then we also don't want a million accessory structures out there. So trying to figure out how to word that, and we were struggling with this, so any input would be helpful on this section too.
Are we looking at lot coverage?
Well, we have, so at 110-481, that's where we are.
Okay.
We do have the option of that 3.5% of the total land area, so that will probably be in there. But then what to do with the accessory structures that are required with federal or state regulations.
These accessory structures, they're not habitable, right? They're just like
Correct.
storage and,
Yeah, storage and parking, that's really it. Or if it's open, then it can be like a tiki structure or just like a shade structure.
what about, let's say, if you're in velocity zone? How do you address that?
They would they'd have to meet the Florida building code. So if they're in a velocity zone, they would have to meet all the requirements there.
Breakaway walls?
No walls, no, just the uplift, just the uplift.
How about structures unless required by federal government or some government entity and proven? So the fishing industry, they say, we need this. Well, prove you need that.
Right.
And we will allow it.
And that's what we were writing in there for the location. If the location needs to be closer to the water, that's really above us. It's if it's a federal or state regulation, you must show us the requirement of that. So that's what's written in that 110-478. So it's something similar of, show us the documentation that this is required, and then does that not count against your accessory structure, or should it, or,
Yeah.
because you don't want an abundance of accessory structures, but
I think it should count into the total structures. I mean, because if they've got to have those for their business, they have to have those. They don't have to have any others necessarily.
but say if they're required to have 3, but they're only allowed 2 accessory structures.
Well, but that's what I'm saying, if they can approve, or prove that they need to have 3 for business, then that's the exception. I mean, but otherwise, 2 unless proven by the, whatever federal entity is requiring them to have those.
Well, the other component, I think, Chuck, is in commercial floor area ratio, right? So if the FAR is, let's say, 0.4, and you've already occupied 0.4, there's really no room to add any more floor area.
Have you
Because if
come
it's
across that?
If it's
Open structure,
enclosed,
We
Yeah.
wouldn't count that.
It wouldn't apply to the floor area ratio, would it?
No.
'Cause it's not habitable space.
Yeah, we
well,
wouldn't.
it does actually, habitable. Yeah, if it's commercial and it's enclosed building, then that's floor area.
Okay.
If it's in the enclosed building.
Yes.
We're envisioning this being like a separate, not necessarily habitable area, so we didn't,
Some of them will, some of them,
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on
it'll
what
depend on
it
the use,
is.
so we'd have to look at it that way. And plus allowable lot coverage would also kick in too with this as well.
Exactly.
So those could be, we could work with those to figure that out, to come up with something.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
It's your show. I'm just sitting here.
So moving on, we added a section for construction trailers because we really didn't have anything in our codes. So right now, how it's written, are allowed 5 feet from property line and maybe on site for 2 months before and after construction. And then the trailers must be removed during any named storm event. Temporary buildings or sheds are used exclusively for construction purposes, are exempt from the Florida Building Code, but must retain a building permit through planning and zoning.
Okay.
Does that include porta potties?
And yeah, usually those are removed prior to or
Okay,
during a named
just-
event, yeah.
Just asking.
I like it.
And then outdoor kitchens, we know that we'll get questions on these. We have already received questions on, well, we always are getting questions on outdoor kitchens. Can we have them? What can we do? We actually just talked to FDM earlier today about accessory structures, and also asked them about outdoor kitchens. They saw no issues with them, just making sure that they have cutoff valves. So this is the opportunity, we think, if we want to include them, because our code really doesn't discuss outdoor kitchens.
You're talking about water supply cutoffs?
Correct, we would do
Yes.
that. And it would also be designed to resist flotation and movement during a storm event. So they would be designed to stay in place. The shut-off valves would have to be manually operated, so prior to a storm, the commitment would be that to shut them off. Any electric would be on a separate GFCI. So that's how we would see that. And if you were to have a cheeky hut installed, you would not be allowed to attach any electrical or plumbing to it. If you were to pull a Florida Building Code tiki hut permit, then you would be allowed to have plumbing or electrical attached to it, but a cheeky hut you would not.
Cheeky hut, strictly shade, no other, no electrical, no water.
Not attached to it. It
Right.
can run to it, but none of the flooring nor any of those components can be attached to the structure
Okay.
in any way. It would be the way that would be monitored.
So the question I had when I saw this outdoor kitchen thing, I know a lot of our issues with having to elevate homes is for the sewer line issues too. If we have a sink with a drain on the ground level, what's to stop backflow?
That would be the commitment to do a shut-off valve at grade such that, hopefully to prevent the floodwaters from coming in. Ideally, you still have your connection to the home that's going to be at risk even if you're elevated. Unfortunately, that's just, and we did talk about that today with FDM, and it's something they're aware of, and this is how they're also approaching it too, would be the shut-off valve to help prevent the inundation into the sewer system.
Okay. So there's a sewer line shut-off valve you can,
Well, you're talking about from the drain?
Yeah.
Yeah, you would shut that off. So
Okay.
you would have a valve.
because I know that's been the big problem, right? You're not allowed to have a washer and dryer or a toilet or a shower on the ground floor.
Correct.
Because of the drain situation. Okay.
So by sewer, you mean sanitary sewer, not storm sewer?
Sanitary sewer,
Sanitary
right,
sewer.
like your toilet or your
There
shower.
are shut-off valves for sanitary?
Your drain.
Never seen it.
I haven't either, but I'm hearing it, right? Am I-
I mean, anytime you have a hole in a pipe, you can put a valve on it. I mean, anytime you have a pipe,
That-
there's a way
that's the thing would be
there's a way
like
to
a
put a
sink
valve
drain.
on it, no doubt. You put
Yeah.
a ball valve or whatever. I just never have seen it done.
No, it's not done. It's not customary.
Right, I know, but that's what brought the question up, right?
Yeah, I mean,
How do
that's
we-
the only, I don't know what would prevent you with the sink valve being able to put a shut off such that if you were like evacuating for a storm, you would be able to prevent the water from going,
Well, I mean, you could put a backflow preventer and it would actually go upside down so that water can't come. No, it wouldn't work either because you still
Yeah,
want water to go
exactly, yeah.
down and you don't want
Well,
water to go
in
down,
terms
right?
of a.
Yeah, you need a valve.
In case of an emergency, I think most lift stations don't work anyways.
Well,
So,
yeah, that was one of the conversations too, is in general, by the time if we would experience such an event, that would be a problem, we probably have a whole heck of a lot of other stuff
Yep.
that's going to be happening as well, versus just, yeah. But we're open for, I mean, obviously suggestions. We never want to ask somebody to do something that's not, capable of being done. So we'd be very careful with that as well.
It was just a curiosity, because I know that's been an issue with why you can't have stuff on the ground floor, part of the issue.
And we know that we will see more of these if we do allow shade structures or tiki structures. We know we'll start getting the questions, start seeing more outdoor kitchens, so that's why we would like to address it now, get ahead.
Okay?
So, yeah.
Okay. So outdoor kitchens, do you want to get into a placement of them? I mean, so can somebody put an outdoor kitchen right on their seawall? Since we're,
Right.
talking about these things, do you want to get into placements of them?
We would still, they would adhere to the same
Placement.
same placement as an accessory structure. So we would, while you may want to put a kitchen up and maybe not have a cover, you would still be required to be within the accessory structure that we've provided here, the setbacks. And the height limitation that we already have is 36 inches projecting above. So that's what we were thinking.
Okay?
So is there any way of
In height.
referring some of these things to things? Because like there's been times where I've wanted to look at stuff and it's just like, well, okay, well, here's kitchens, so shouldn't it all be inclusive of outdoor kitchens? I mean, or reference, make a reference to, so there's somebody, if they're considering looking at doing a kitchen in their backyard or wherever, they don't have to go to you guys specifically and say, okay, where can I put it? If you have it here, so here, outdoor kitchens, here's some of the parameters, and for more information, refer to such and such, such and such.
So obviously, once we kind of get this stuff in, it'll be published on Municode. But we've also been discussing too, doing an FAQ on the website for exactly what you're talking about, fences, kitchens, tikis, all that stuff, and kind of making it a little more user-friendly versus diving through Municode. And we thought that would probably be what people would go to. So we are working on doing that as well.
Cool. Yeah, because once it gets codified, it's going to be in Municode, so they can, and Municode is searchable, by text, whatever, so unfortunately, I get to use it a lot, but, so it is there, but it would be nice to have, what if I want an outdoor kitchen, on our website, it'd be really cool. Okay,
Exactly.
so that gets us through this whole thing here with all the red on it? We're good? Anybody got any other questions or suggestions?
I can see the wheels turning.
I know.
Well, I'm just wondering, what's the definition of outdoor kitchen? Would you require, a refrigerator? I mean, what is really a sink only or an oven? And so what do you,
The ones that we've come across here are sink, a kegerator, and I think that was
A grill?
a grill, yeah, the
Yeah,
grill.
grill or
built-in
griddle or,
Yeah.
Yeah.
cooking. So
But
you
isn't
would
a
have-
kitchen actually defined by a range? Isn't that the defining point? It makes it the kitchen? Like,
Yeah, we probably should definitely look
Yeah.
at that, because we can put parameters, obviously, on,
maybe it should not be considered or defined as kitchen, just.
because just a refrigerator outside is not a kitchen. You just have a refrigerator, one of the little dorm room refrigerators outside, maybe just for the weekend, and you put it back.
we could.
But I think the
maybe-
range is
But that's not a
where,
permanent
Okay.
structure
Right.
either.
Right. We
Yeah.
could-
I think the range is what defines the kitchen.
Gotcha. So maybe we just say outdoor amenities and list the stuff
Yeah.
with
More
parameters, so we
specific.
could definitely do that. That
And then we
way,
can put that in our definition section if we need to.
and we'll make sure we don't conflict with the Florida Building Code definitions or anything like that. So yeah, we can definitely, I agree, better define that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Nice. Good catch.
Yep, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, any way you guys see this going south, let's talk about it, because we definitely want to be prepared and
Well,
have it written up.
I mean, now that
with
we've
us.
had it and had a chance to digest it a little bit, we can sit down with it and send suggestions as well, too. I mean, it doesn't all have to happen right now. We can bring it back later, and send suggestions in after we've read it, because we're not taking any official action on it at this point right now anyway. So any one of the planning commission members can say, hey, take a look at this a little deeper or whatever. And then when it comes back in the form of a proposal for a new ordinance, then we can discuss the finer points too at that point. I like it. Good stuff. All right. We got an RFQ as our next item up for bids.
Yeah, this will be really quick. Just wanted
Sure it will.
to.
Have you seen these people here?
I know.
What's your definition of quick?
So we already have this on DemandStar, RFQ for a new city master plan. Just wanted to let everybody know that that is out there. The timeline is on page 14. So the release date was November 21st, and then the submittal date is January 19th, so that's
Okay.
coming up. So y'all will be involved with that. Just wanted to put that on your radar.
Okay. Nice. How long do we think this whole process is going to take?
Probably around like 18 months.
Yeah. Okay.
So what's the objective?
To create a new city master plan and then adopt that. Our last city master plan was done in 2001.
Yeah, the Dwani plan.
Yes, and then that was not officially adopted.
Yeah.
So,
So when you
This
say
is
master
just-
plan, would you define that?
yes, ideally, this one would be adopted, so that's in this RFQ as well as helping the city through that adoption process.
So what's master plan in your vision?
Looking towards the future of the city, it would also, they would look at our land development regulations, like your zoning codes, and our comprehensive plan, make sure that everything's together. But the master plan is really looking towards the future of Madeira Beach and where the city and the residents want to go in the future.
It shows you on here some of the, under the scope of work, some of the elements of the plan. Land use, transportation, economic development, resiliency, design, and then other things as deemed appropriate. So,
So, because when I think of master plan, I think of structures. I think of development. So I was just thinking if master plan was really the appropriate description of the intent. If you're looking at modifying or looking at zoning code, traffic, whatever, that, I don't look at that sort of as a master plan.
Almost like a comprehensive view of the city and where the city sees itself in the future.
I think if you can find Dwani's plan and look at that, I believe is what we're looking to try to do. Is
Exactly.
create something for the city that is where the future of the city is going to go. And in fact, and that's one of the things I was thinking about, well, when it had been discussed before about how you have Google Maps and Google Streets, so you theoretically could go down Gulf Boulevard and identify structures that these are within guidelines. Here is what could go if extended and proposed.
Well,
believe,
we-
right?
We currently have zoning regulations.
Right,
that
but I mean,
describe-
this would be a plan going off of what our existing zoning areas are and what they could be.
So,
well, it also proposes changes to land development regulations, potential zoning, and development of character districts and things like that, and transportation corridors. I was here for the Dwani thing. And it's pretty intense, really. I mean, it's a book.
It's online as well. It's on our website.
Yeah.
so what's the budget for consulting fees?
I think it's around 150,000.
But then isn't that in the RFQ for what different stipulations of what we're looking for from a
Exactly.
concept, yeah.
Yeah, there's a scope of
Accompanied.
work in there.
The Dwani plan, one of the things that the consultants did, but this wasn't adopted, was they did propose comprehensive plan amendments that did not pass, that were rejected by the state back then in the early 2000s. Bits and pieces of it were kind of influenced certain land development regulation things, like with the planned development rezoning and the alternative temporary lodging use standards. But it wasn't like bits and pieces of it were like adopted. But basically, the master plan kind of is like a grand vision, which then you put those things into your comprehensive plan and in the land development regulations for the zoning also. But
Yeah, I think it's more of a framework document, and not code, really. It's a vision. It's, where do you see yourself in 5 years, or where do you see yourself in 10 years? Kind of that interview question, right? And then it lays out the roadmap, how to get there. But it's a framework. It's not carved in stone. It's a guidebook, basically.
So I guess we don't have this crystal ball, right, to know where we will be in 10 years. And you want to basically create that vision by engaging consultants. Is that,
Well, the consultants do a bunch of public charrettes too, where they go to each zone, they go to each district, they have public hearing or
so
public
I'm very
input.
familiar with
Yeah,
that.
there was a lot of that in the last one.
Yeah, I just, 150 budget is, for Madeira Beach, it's a lot of money. So just want to make sure the taxpayers' dollars are spent wisely. It's always good to know, where we're going from here, where we'll be 10 years, 20 years down the road. It's always a good thing. But I just wanted to just be careful with, where the money goes. That's all.
Sure. All right, anything else we need to do on that topic?
No, it was just FYI.
Okay. So we had a couple items. Oh, do you want to, let's see, planning commission discussion. Let's do what's on the agenda, then we'll get to some other ideas. Johns Pass Village Activity Center zoning workshop.
Yes, this is also, just wanted to put that on everyone's radar. So we do have the Johns Pass Village Activity Center is moving forward, so that will be going to the county for a public meeting on February the 20th. And this is for their map at the county's level. And then they'll come back to BOC in March, mid-March. And with that, we also have to update our zoning, so our land development regulations, to adopt that, to create new zoning. So we're starting to have workshops on the zoning element of that. So these public workshops, we have 3 planned right now. The first one is Thursday, January the 18th from 1 to 3. Saturday, the 27th of January, 10 to noon. And then Tuesday, the 23rd, 10 to noon. All of these will be the same. We see it as like a short presentation by staff, and then having almost like workshops or workshop style, where we have different stations of each of the new zoning categories and what's there currently, the potential of what it could be. Here are the setbacks, here's the current height, here are some buildings in those areas, that's what their heights are. So all of that, all those meetings will be the same things, but those are starting to happen.
When,
They'll all be here, yes.
when will be,
Yes, all in January.
when will be Pinellas County's meeting?
February the 20th,
So these meetings will be before February 20th?
yes.
Can you
This is
say
just
the
so-
dates of the meetings again?
Yeah, it is January the 18th, that's Thursday, 1 to 3. Saturday, the 27th, 10 to noon. And Tuesday, the 23rd, 10 to noon.
Pinellas County will review this mostly for land use amendment?
It's a change to their map and creating an activity center. So there's 3 different maps. The county has their map, We have to make a change on their map to create the activity center. And then also locally, we have it on with our comprehensive plan, our future land use map. That's to also create the activity center, Johns Pass Activity Center, and put that in our future land use map. And then the last step, which is what these meetings are about, is putting on the zoning map. So creating new zoning that brings all the elements, that intensity, density, and everything that's written in that special area plan, and putting that in the zoning. So that could be light design guidelines, the intensities, the densities, all of that, and codifying that into the zoning.
That's all in Johns Pass?
Yes.
Are we expecting big changes in Johns Pass?
With the activity center, there will be some changes. It's really to retain the character of what's down there, because right now, what's written in the land development regulations, in our comprehensive plan, the categories do not correspond with the development that's down there.
Okay.
So we've already gone through, partially through the county's plans and ours. They're not codified yet, but then we also have to bring that into our zoning. So that's what, these meetings are starting that zoning discussion in the workshops. So these won't be the only workshops that we have. And it'll come to you multiple times as well.
And isn't it good we'll have this, this is kind of the plan was, in case there's a major storm event, we have all this in line ahead of time instead of trying to figure it out after.
Exactly. And then also for compatible redevelopment, you want to maintain that character of Johns Pass in that area, so it's also for that as well.
And then don't you have overlay maps? Because as I recall, there's been many discussions in there about how some were more effective than others, and
So there will be 6 different, so we have character districts. We have the activity center, which is one area of land, and then it's broken up into 6 different character districts, because we understand that Boardwalk looks different than, Barefoot Beach area looks different than.
well, I'm thinking in
Village
terms of to make
Boulevard.
it simpler for you, because the people are going to be asking questions, just like
Yeah.
crazy things. So,
We'll have a lot of maps, and we'll all be there, so.
And the room won't be empty.
no, it'll be packed. Okay.
Yep, for sure. Okay, good stuff. We got those on your schedule. We can show up and sit in the back quietly and not have to be up here getting rotten fruit thrown at us. Okay, so we had a couple members of our planning commission bring up some ideas. Mr. Conley had wanted to bring up a discussion about things that we could do for waterway cleanliness, something to that effect, right?
Yes. I just wrote this down about your master plan. It's our resources, and our resources are what everybody comes here for, is the beach, the air, and the water. I've owned my house for 13 years, and the water quality in the canal has changed drastically in 13 years. I'm wondering if you would, because you want to do this master plan, if possibly we could go back 10 years and make a study on the growth. In other words, the old houses getting knocked down and the new ones being built, and what growth rate that is, and how that is affecting what is happening now. And at that growth rate, what will that be 5 years from now? And what will that be 10 years from now? And how is that going to affect our beaches, our water, and our air quality as we move forward? Because we can write the greatest master plan, but if our resources we're going to lose because of this massive growth that is happening now. Something's got to be, we've got to change something. We've got to curtail something so we don't lose more, if you follow what I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely. And that's definitely something that through this master plan process, an outside consultant can help us and has those resources to do research like that on the growth patterns and how is it affecting us,
So
community.
what I brought up before this meeting was going back and looking at our code ordinances in the city for water. What do we do to protect our water? Right now, we have a workshop coming up on the 27th with the BOC about the liveaboards and them not getting pumped out, which is, now, if you take the last 10 years and you look at all the boats that weren't there 10 years ago, that are there now, and what effect that it's doing to the water, I see it. I can get you people in here from Gainesville that are marine biologists that can stand there and tell you what's happening. But unless we do something to prevent what is happening, we're going to end up with nothing. We're going to end up with the Hudson River, which is polluted. So it's like we have to have this eye, and we can't lose the eye. I've been sitting here 2 years. We have never talked about water. Yes, we are doing a great job on the beaches as far as smoking, the cans, the pollution, and so on and so forth. We got a great crew doing a great job. That's only one step. That's only the beginning. If you have horrible water and you've got debris floating at it and so on and so forth. Why I bring this up is because every week I watch a landscaper come and blow all the grass clippings back into the canal, all the leaves on 5 houses. I've watched a neighbor across the canal throw 45, 50 sandbags after the hurricane in the canal. And I went over and I told the young man not to do that, and they still did it. So, I'm not a cop, and I don't want to be a bad guy, and I don't want to be whatever, but I'm trying to enlighten everybody what is happening, and I'm sure there's other people here that could tell you the same thing. And that's why I would like to bring this up. And I would like to move forward with it, and it's got to stay right there at the forefront. Because we can't lose this. If we lose this, we're done. Thank you.
And just so you know, too, as part of the CRS milestones that we do, and you hear us talk about all the time, part of that is how we communicate requirements to the city and how we manage the stormwater and the education we put out there for landscapers. I know Florida recently changed it. Before we had some requirements in place where we could hold the landscapers more accountable for their activities, but that was lifted. I'll have to look up and see the exact verbiage of that. But that is part of the things that we try to achieve in the CRS and educating to the best we can and controlling those aspects of it. But there's a lot more to be done, and it's a much bigger picture.
The other thing is, Marcy, is 2 doors from me, they just built a new house. 7 years ago, they paved the road. The road was perfect. If you go in front of that new house, you will see oil in the macadam on the blacktop. Where is that oil going? It's going in the storm drain. Where is the storm drain going? In the canal. I've tried to bring this up before. Everybody just... So now we're on the contractors. Something's got to be done because this is a daily thing, every day, day in, day out. And I don't care where, it could be on my road, it could be on, Dillon's Road, it's happening. And something's got to be done. It can't keep going on. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you. Mr. Dillon, you had something?
After the last big rain event, I had, as many of us did, all kinds of mulch on my dock. And I'd like to see where we could start to basically not allow wooden mulch in our city. I mean, and in terms of just not only the docks, the streets, going down 140th with that big rain event, everybody with their nasty mulch and everything. It not only is bad for the looks, it's terrible for the sewers too. And I know Megan would very love that, and as to where, and so my question is, where can we start to see about making mulch not usable in our city? I mean, especially with, here we're going to have Tuesday as to all the streets and everything are going to be a shamble. All the sewers are going to be backed up. So I was wondering where or how we can start the communication and talk about eliminating the use of wooden mulch in our city.
Are there other municipalities that have ordinances related to what type of ground cover you can use?
Yeah, I would say we would look at the landscape code. I think
Yep.
that would probably be the best
So I don't know what else
section
you
to
do other than,
review.
everybody
then
looks like
all-
Arizona and has rocks.
Yeah,
Because we're trying to cut down on fertilizer, so you want less grass, right? Yeah, it's a dilemma, for sure. I mean, is there like a non-floating mulch? Like lead mulch? I don't know. Well, that's bad.
There are rubber
Not lead
mulch.
either, but,
Rubber mulch, but yet you get a heavy
Worse
enough,
than
heavy enough
wood
rain
mulch,
and that,
yeah.
it's
It's
going to float too.
non-decomposable.
Yeah, so,
But-
I mean, and like I say, it's just something that we deal with this every rain event, every high tide and everything, and it's,
At least the mulch is natural-ish, right? I guess that's the best part of it, but, if you got some unnatural
Yeah.
things.
Well, they might dye some of them red and stuff, which,
Yeah, true.
but the wood is wood and it's going to float.
it's going
Yeah.
to float, yeah.
That'd be interesting to see what you come up with.
Well, I mean,
We know you have
just
so
to bring
little
up
to do.
discussion so
Yeah.
that we can potentially move it on to the board.
Right. Yep.
So that there's something can be looked into, I mean, to help our city. I mean, and it not only is messy and dirty, I mean, just like the last rain, I mean, coming down 140th, it was,
oh, you see it everywhere.
Yeah, we really don't have any landscape maintenance ordinances, I guess you'd say. I mean, look at like Beach Place on 140th, still got all that sand piled up in the front, and all their stuff's dead. I mean, it looks crappy too, but not much you can do about it, right? You can't legislate, hey, you got to plant new bushes because your bushes all died. But that would be sort of something to look
And we
into
can
as
take a
well.
look at our landscape code.
If you go by there, you see half their front is still all the sand piled up at the corner there's 140th, right? Beach Place, that's Beach Place, right? Yeah. Anyway, they had mountains of sand. Now they just have a flat 6 inches of sand, but it's half of it and dead grass and dead stuff. Kind of just looks crappy, and that's a really popular, it's a sight line, and we're in tourist season. We want to make a good impression on people, just like you're saying. You don't want mulch flying all over the place and laying where it's not supposed to be. Same thing with the sand. Is there some way to get them to clean that stuff up?
Mulch is not supposed to be ground cover, it's supposed to be keeping the roots moist. So
Okay.
it's really, it's not supposed to be.
Not for large areas. Yeah,
Yeah, it's not supposed to be ground cover.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, so maybe there's some enforcement there. I don't know. I mean, code enforcement out there, you got too much mulch, how do we do it? Anyway, okay, cool, good stuff to look forward to. So the next thing is our meeting schedule. Everybody
Mr.
saw it?
Chairman, I do have a couple
Oh, sure, go ahead.
recommendations as well,
Please.
if that's okay.
Of course.
Last time I had brought up the possibility of maybe taking a second look at the ADA ramps and truncated domes and things in that nature. But you know, I live up here on Causeway, and every time I walk the sidewalks to the beach, I feel very ashamed. We don't really have good sidewalks. They're all cracked, and they're small. They just really, if talking about tourism, it's not us. It's been there for a long, long time. So if there's a possibility that we could, and I know it's a DOT road, but that's another item on my agenda that I was going to ask. But if we are able to maybe put a budget out there for reconstruction of the sidewalks, at least on the Causeway, I'm looking at both sides. It really, I mean, you guys walk it, I'm sure it looks really, really bad. So if I may recommend that, to basically have a budget.
You were also talking about John's Pass, right? There were sidewalks that were cracked.
Yes.
And you're not talking about the causeway itself, you're talking about,
I'm talking about
All the
150th.
150th.
Yeah, 100, yes. If
Right,
you
no.
walk it, I mean, I'm sure you
Yeah.
have, and you can see it's just not a sidewalk. It's not a walk. It's just really hazard. And it's subject to, who knows, possible liability.
Absolutely.
You know, so that's one item I wanted to discuss. And then there's also, as far as safety, I drive on Madeira Way, and I like to basically make a right on Gulf Boulevard. There's a sign that says, make a right after you stop. And the way the Gulf Boulevard is versus the Madeira Way, it's not 90-degree angle, so you
Right.
really have to turn your head over 120 degrees to see cars coming. In the meantime, there are pedestrians trying to cross. So what I would love to suggest to possibly put a sign there that says, no, yeah, basically remove the sign that says right turn after the, after the stop. Just allow the cars to move as soon as the light turns green. On the other hand, there is another sign up here on the Causeway, 150th, that you're allowed to make a right turn. You're not allowed to make a right turn. You're not, even though there's no reason for not being able to make it. There's no pedestrians, there's no cross drive or whatever. So both ends of the Madeira Way, I would love to take a look at those signs and just kind of, analyze and see what's really warranted. Again, it's all about safety. There's a lot of tourism, kids running, so just want to bring that up.
and that crosswalk, or that speed bump on Madeira Way right at the stop sign is also very weird, I'm going to say it.
True.
Have a speed bump at a stop sign, like,
No, the next one is probably controversial. You guys may not like it, but it's a suggestion to take over the Madeira Causeway from waterward of the bridge to Gulf Boulevard, from DOT. I mean, DOT can still own it as long as we can agree to maintain it. And then when you reconstruct anything, you won't have to be necessarily dealing with DOT regulations, because the Causeway is not really a DOT, it's owned by DOT, but it's more urban, it needs to be looked at a little bit differently, because that's our gateway to the city. So if there's a
probably some
possibility.
requirements, because it's an
So
evacuation zone too, evacuation route, you have to.
So FDOT does have complete street policies where it would still be able to stay a state road with those kinds of improvements. The city would most likely have to initiate the process. I know some other cities for Gulf Boulevard, St. Pete Beach and Treasure Island are working with Ford, Pinellas, and FDOT on looking at safety and other improvements to Gulf Boulevard in their respective cities. But the results of those studies haven't been released. But the Gulf Boulevard zone is a state road also. So but, just to clarify that. But-
Okay. So we can check that out. Good stuff.
That's all she wrote. Thank you.
That's all? No controversy.
If I may, I know
ma'am.
no one wants to hear from me, and no one ever wants to hear from the
Oh,
lawyer.
we love to hear from you,
And-
Nancy. Yeah,
No,
we-
you, no,
we
you
do.
don't.
I
It's
do.
okay, it's okay. All wonderful ideas, and I'm sure staff's noted them, but I just want to remind you of your role. Those aren't things that you would be addressing unless specifically authorized and directed by the Board of Commissioners to address. So it's limited. So great ideas, convey your ideas,
Just
definitely,
ideas, that's
definitely
all.
move them on, but you're limited per your code to consider requests for amendments to the comprehensive plan, the land use plan map, amendments to the land development regulations, the official zoning map, and here's the fun part, and other matters as specifically requested by the Board of Commissioners. So if that's some of those topics the Board of Commissioners hears through some fashion that you want to talk about, and they say, hey, let's have the planning commission do that, that would be great. I just don't want any expectations that staff's going to bring
Right.
something back on those topics.
Oh, no,
Because they
no, we-
may not.
We know we have a watchful mayor.
Yes, yes, very, right?
I mean,
But I
really,
just
the
want to make sure
better,
you knew.
the better place would be to take that to the Board of Commissioners meeting in
Right.
the public comment section, bring that out.
Just, I didn't want anyone, any expectations
Or-
that next month we're going to have a, conversation about something that you brought up, although they're all wonderful ideas.
We're just talking amongst
Then
friends
that's
right
fine.
now.
I enjoy it. I learn a lot when you guys
girls.
chat. I just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure.
I think in the past, with Linda, we would send a request to her before we had open discussion, and then she would approve it or say, no, that's not what we should have. Maybe we should look back into doing it that way, instead of just, hey, what are we talking about? And
Well, I
we're
got
just
hit
here
up on
for-
the stairway on the way in here.
Right, so instead of so it's a little more organized, instead of just here, oh, I want to talk about the cleats at the marina today, and we're here for 25 extra
Right.
minutes talking about the
That's a good point.
cleats at the marina.
Or shoot us an email. I think that's what we did before.
We used to do that, right, you just send an
Yeah.
email, hey, I'd like to talk about this.
It's a great idea, so
And she would say yes or no, that's not really what
If
we
you've
should
got
be
concerns,
discussing.
send them in by email ahead of the meeting. We'll put it on the agenda to discuss.
Perfect.
I like it. Thank you.
We just wanted to make sure that you didn't know we were up here sleeping.
I know you're not sleeping.
Can't be too sure. Okay, so we got our meeting set up. Nothing really to talk about there, it just is what it is. So anybody else have anything else? If we don't, we are out of here.
Move to adjourn.
Meeting is adjourned.